Ashlin Haddon, owner of Ashlin Haddon Insurance Agency.
And this is Z.
This is my assistant and my commercial manager. And we've got CJ on today because he just came out this morning and started talking about this new Amazon Services Business Solution Agreement.
Yes.
And we're going through it thinking, what the heck does this mean? So I called CJ and I was like, help, you're an attorney. we need some assistance. So CJ, tell us a little bit about what you do real quick, and then we're going to dig in and ask a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
All right. It is always awesome to speak with both of you guys. So what we do is we help sellers all over the world. About 40% of our business is drafting plans of action and appeals and Bezos escalations and inauthentics and all that happy stuff that Amazon issues, suspensions, listing suspensions, account suspensions. About 40% of our practice has to do with intellectual property rights, where either sellers are being falsely accused of violating rights, or we're helping private label brands build and protect their intellectual property rights. That's kind of private label brand protection. And 20% has to do with taking Amazon to arbitration and contracts, where Amazon refuses to reinstate, refuses to give sellers their money, refuses to release their inventory and that sort of stuff. And Amazon, what's particular today is that Amazon is now imposing a new contract on sellers all over the world. And that's the Business Solutions Agreement, which many consultants and many sellers don't even know it exists. This is your contract with Amazon. This is what requires you to have product liability insurance. This is what requires you to do in order to maintain a business on Amazon, and all different ways that they use to kind of help and also harm sellers.
So CJ, some people are saying that this business service agreement is taking place of the terms and service. That is not true, correct? This is in addition to the terms of service, right?
This is the terms and service. Like when you look at the policies and people call it a participation agreement, at best, this is the contract. If there's something else that those consultants or sellers are thinking about, they're totally wrong, okay? This is the contract with Amazon, okay? And that email that says you're required to stay abreast of our terms and conditions, this is it. It's just called something else. It used to be hidden in the definition section when sellers were signing up, but this is your contract with Amazon.
And this says everything else that we've said in the past is a null and void. This is your new, it has to be this or nothing.
Yes, this is the agreement. And it even says that within the agreement that some provisions override others, even though they totally conflict with each other. It is not a simple contract to review. It's not a simple contract. You got to identify where the inconsistencies are and also figure out which one really governs.
Right. Okay. So make sure you have an attorney who knows a shit.
We know somebody.
I agree 100%, 1,000%. You know, if you have people who are writing plans of action who don't even know what this agreement is, you're not getting what you're paying for.
Right.
Right.
So Z and I both have been in insurance a really long time, and we're looking at this contract and we're like, huh?
What is this?
What does this mean? So just for you watching, there's a section 9 on insurance. Okay.
All right.
Section 9 on insurance says the gross proceeds of your transaction exceeds the applicable insurance threshold, which down below says $10,000
consecutively for 3 months,
or otherwise requested. So, in layman's terms, what does that mean for our sellers?
Okay, the basics of it are just what you said. That if you do more than $10,000 a month for 3 months, you're required to have insurance. And I'm not just here to tell people to call Ashlin and get coverage, but you should have coverage anyway, because it's required under other paragraphs in your agreement, and it's just good business, okay?
Right.
Also, Ashlin is also my broker when I have my first phone call. So yeah, it says if you have more than $10,000, if you have 10,000 or more for 3 months, you are required to have the coverage.
Okay. So then up above in section 6, there's the indemnification clause. And the indemnification clause says that you will defend, indemnify, hold harmless Amazon and all of the directors and officers and everyone who they think that they need to list. So our question is, if you have indemnification, but you're not required to have insurance until you're at that $10,000 threshold, what's the point of having a indemnification clause?
Well, what is indemnification anyway, CJ?
All right, I'm going to go with Z first. We'll get the background first, okay? Indemnification means you have to pay the other side for any losses. So let's take a toilet seat, okay, that was bought on Amazon and it caused flooding in somebody's home. We've had this exact case, okay? So you would have to indemnify Amazon for the cost it incurred to reimburse that homeowner or the homeowner's insurance company for the damages to fix their bathroom and ceiling and sheetrock and painting, right? And all that other happy stuff. That's indemnification. Hold harmless means that you're going to, if the other side incurs costs, they will not have to pay, you will have to pay. Defending means providing them with a lawyer to defend themselves. But that's kind of a little bit of a shady provision because it doesn't say you will provide a lawyer, right?
Right.
Means they'll pay for their defense costs. So let's say Amazon uses Davis, Wright, and Tremaine, who handles all their arbitrations, who's billing out like hundreds and hundreds of dollars per hour, and sometimes hundreds of dollars per lunch, okay?
Right.
You know, you could get stuck paying that whether you have insurance or not, and you could end up having to write that check, and Amazon is not shy about going after people personally.
No.
So if they don't have an insurance policy, how are they going to indemnify them?
Get your checkbook out.
Right. So yes, this says that you're only required to have the policy after 3 consecutive months of sales of $10,000 or more. But it also says you're going to indemnify no matter what, no matter what your sales are. If you're a dollar, you sold 1 item, or you sold 5,000 items, you still have to indemnify them. So people reading this, yes, it says $10,000 in consecutive sales for 3 months. That's when it's required, but you're still required to indemnify them. So if you can't fork out $20,000 now, then you better get a darn good policy.
And I gotta also tell you, the actual damages many times are not really that significant, but what kills small businesses and kills people is just the defense. Oh, you're loving this, right?
To hire someone like you.
Well, I want to let you know, Ashlin was like going like this, saying that I'm writing stuff, but she doesn't realize that the Zoom recording we're using only does the speaker. I'm not sure if people can see you unless you're speaking. I'm not really sure how it's going to come down. But the defense cost, having to pay a lawyer, is more often than not the bigger cost. And if you have insurance, the insurance provides a lawyer, and you're also more likely to get Amazon to accept the lawyer that's being provided by an insurance company because there's liability. So let's say I sold a toilet seat, it caused a flood, I've got to indemnify and defend Amazon. So I use, one of my associates here to handle it. Amazon may be like, whoa, 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 they're not property defense lawyers. We want you to pay our lawyer. So the insurance policy that you should have from the outset is going to cover all this stuff, defense costs, and just in case there's a settlement or any real damages.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfectly said. And then last question before we let you go. Z and I were having a discussion this morning about Amazon and suing Amazon. And she's like, Amazon can't be sued. I said, talk to CJ. He sues them all the time. So ask your question. The hell?
So ultimately, CJ, when you're taking Amazon to court, we got all this fun wording, and Amazon has to be listed as an additional insured on the policy. Where is it where they can go after Amazon without being penalized against themselves? If Amazon is in fact listed as an insured, do they not have the same right as a policy applicant or a policy holder?
Okay.
How in the world do you get Amazon to pay out?
All right. Couple of different things. Let's break it down. In every single seller agreement, every time you're selling on Amazon, you have agreed to take your claims against Amazon to binding arbitration with the American Arbitration Association, which for most claims, as long as it's under $1 million, is better for the sellers. Okay, it's faster, it is cheaper. Once you start talking about claims that are like above $1 million, then court is much better because arbitration is going to cost you more money because it requires 3 arbitrators rather than 1. And each of those guys is getting paid by the hour, where if you're in court, you're not paying the judge anything. They get a salary or from the federal government. Okay, so for most claims that are smaller, say up to 75, up to 150 to 300, it's better to be in arbitration. So that's what we do. We actually don't sue Amazon. We take them to arbitration over and over and over again. And that's really is something good for sellers. So 1, it's arbitration. Number 2, you just bring them there through the American Arbitration Association. And that's how you bring your claims to Amazon if you're a seller. Now, let's say you're a homeowner who's purchased something on Amazon. I think the buyers, when you sign up your Amazon account as a consumer, it has the same thing. Any issues are going to go through arbitration. But this is really, especially on relatively smaller claims, it is much better than suing them.
Okay. So when would one of our clients want to reach out to you? I mean, besides being suspended.
Right.
Okay. Here's what I suggest to sellers. Private label sellers, before you put in your name on a product, give us a call. We'll look at it really quickly to make sure you're not infringing upon somebody else's rights. Any seller, large or small, private label or not, you should be developing your own brand. Even if you're not selling your own products yet, file for a trademark. We can walk you through how to do it yourself, or we can do it for you. Once you're selling, do you really need us? Not really. I recommend that every single seller create a corporation themselves. We use Blumberg, B-L-U-M-B-E-R-G. You call them up, you say, hey, I'd like this corporation. They create it for you. Do that yourself. Don't pay a lawyer to do it. But when you need a shareholder agreement, you should use a lawyer. And then if you have any problems selling, give us a call. If you get an inauthentic, a you sold as new, an IP claim against you, or just something you're not sure of, call us. Out of, let's say, 50 calls a day, probably half of them, we're just giving free advice to sellers, and we're totally cool with it. Okay? So contact us for when you're nervous. Contact us when you're creating that entity. We're happy to do it for you. As you're starting to sell, immediately get some insurance from Ashlin and Z and their team. Okay? I'm trying to think of what else. And just stay abreast of the information that we have. Take advantage of the free information we provide.
Join your Facebook group. You guys do a lot of communication. You guys are breaking down this new contract, almost paragraph by paragraph. So stay tuned to your page and kind of keep an eye on what's going on. So the explanation of how this is going to change and how this is going to affect you moving forward seems significant. So Facebook pages, Amazon
sellers,
Amazon sellers, lawyer.com.
Sellers attorney.
We've written 6 books, which are behind me. Also, instead of plugging myself, well, I really appreciate it. For sellers out there with your own brand, okay, or if you're exploring creating your brand, Megla has a fantastic trip coming up to India. I know Ashlin is a big Republican, a big supporter of gun rights, okay? And I take the opposite view when it comes to politics.
So does he.
Yeah.
So does he.
But there's no trade war against India, okay? And IndiaSourcingTrip.com is a remarkable thing that a woman named Megla has put together, IndiaSourcingTrip.com, so you can explore sourcing your products someplace where there are no extra taxes. And whether you're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, somewhere in between, you got to diversify where you're getting your products from. So IndiaSourcingTrip.com is something I am like 1,000% behind, almost as much as I'm behind every seller getting product liability insurance.
There you
Wonderful.
go.
Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, CJ.
All right, guys. Bye-bye. All right, cool. Let me stop the recording.